Okay, well, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming to the Center's Talk. Today, I'm Carolyn Merrick, Program Coordinator. I'll be hosting this event. We have with us the wonderful Linda Scandor. And Linda is part of she's a member here. She does Monday, Wednesday hiking group with us. Linda's a walker, a runner, explorer, a longtime resident of Charlottesville, and we're very fortunate to have her. And she is here today to speak with us about an amazing journey she took in Japan. And she walked or visited the 88 temples of Shikoku. So thanks so much for coming. If you have any questions or comments during Linda's talk, which will be anywhere from about 50 minutes to an hour, you're more than welcome to write them down or put them in the chat. Everybody's muted, so we have a nice quiet silence for Linda to speak. And then at the end of the presentation, I will unmute you all or allow you to unmute yourself. And then you can ask a question that way, or you could also write it in the chat. So this is also being recorded. So if you know someone who would like to see it, you can certainly send it to them. It'll be on our YouTube website. And if you want to know when it will be there, just send me an email. I'll put my email in the chat and I'll let you know. Okay. So
one word.
Absolutely.
If you have a question that refers to a specific slide, there are numbers at the bottom of the page that may help you reference your question. Thank you.
That sounds great. Okay. Well, I'm turning it over to you, Linda. Thank you so much.
Okay, and thank you. Konnichiwa. Like the Appalachian Trail that runs from Georgia to Maine, 88 Buddhist temples is a long walk. Like the Camino that ends at the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela, it's a religious pilgrimage. 88 Buddhist temples is unique in its history and culture. I want to give it the justice it deserves. So to do so, early on, many of the text slides will have text, and I'll simply be reading from the text. I want to get it right. I want to create a perspective to view the experience, honoring the temples and the Japanese people. As the presentation unfolds, I'll be talking more from the cuff, more from the heart. Arigato gozaimasu. 88 Buddhist temples happens in Japan on the fourth largest island, which is Shikoku. So what is this pilgrimage? There are 88 temples and other sacred sites encircling the island of Shikoku. They're numbered 1 to 88, and most people go in a clockwise fashion. Some of them are really close, so you can do a couple of temples a day. Others, such, for example, from 23 to 40 to, I'm sorry, from 23 to 24, take 3 days to walk it. Sometimes you're walking, oh, this has such a light touch. Sometimes you're walking right around the coast where they harvest pearls. Other times you're high in the mountains, but you're always never far from the sea. The thread that connects all of this, it makes the tapestry, is Kobo Daishi. He's credited with founding the pilgrimage and is the central role. He actually developed some of the 88 Buddhist temples on Shikoku. As the journey follows his footsteps, many people believe that Kobo Daishi accompanies the pilgrim as they do the pilgrimage. Today, Kobo Daishi is represented by special walking staff carried by the henros. Henros is the Japanese word for pilgrim. Kobo Daishi lived from 1774 to 835 and is well known in Japanese history. He did many great deeds. He's the founder of Shingon Buddhism in Japan. The pilgrimage became popular in late 17th century when guidebooks were published. I'm a bean counter. I was fortunate enough to find the account for year 2017. There were 416 international persons that finished. In first place were the French with 66 people. American were 40. Today, hundreds and thousands of people from around the world make the pilgrimage. Some do it to remember a friend or a relative who's passed away. This was a father and son walking together. Others to get away from work or responsibility in regular life. To enjoy the outdoors, that got me. To have time alone. All are all are welcomed, regardless of nationality, age, gender, social status, religious affiliation, cultural background. But be mindful, this is a spiritual journey, not a sprint, not a backpacking trail. Be respectful of the path, of the site, of objects, of people. As you follow the footsteps of those who made the pilgrimage before you, consider those who come after you. As you embark on some or all of the pilgrimage, don't worry. Other pilgrims, temple staffs, and local people will support you on your journey. Don't expect things to go always as you plan. Unexpected events, getting lost, bad weather, that's all part of it. It'll happen. If you walk the 88 Buddhist temples, you can apply for a certificate. As you see, I was the 1,429th person. That said, what's most important is not reaching the goal, but it's the journey itself. The warm hearts you meet, the beautiful nature of Shikoku that perfectly complement the actions of doing the pilgrimage. There are different ways of doing the pilgrimage. One is by bus. The neat thing about a bus tour is you have your own monk. He'll lead the religious ceremonies at each temple. You have a driver who knows where he's going. That's no easy feat. You'll also have a handler that will take care of your pilgrim book and make sure that you have all the documentation. You develop a sense of family. Often temples will allow bus groups in where they won't allow individuals to spend the night. You can do a car trip. It takes 10 days. I saw several of these, and what was lovely is you'd see multi-generations. You'd see grandmother, grandpapa coming out, and then the wee grandchildren, something that the family could always treasure. Walking is a traditional and recommended style because this was an act of aesthetic training. It's 715 miles, providing you don't make any wrong turns. We know that's not possible. The guidebook says 40 to 50 days. In my opinion, 60 to 65 seem more realistic. You're carrying everything you own on your backpack. I carried 10.5 pounds. I did a combination. Here you see me on the cherry blossom train. Who could resist that experience? In the right corner, I'm riding in a bus. I loved what the bus drivers and the train drivers wore. They had a cap, a jacket, and always pure white gloves. It really created a sense of pride in their job. In this bus ride, I'm going through a tunnel. You went through lots of tunnels, sometimes a half-mile long, where you would be breathing the fumes of buses and cars. Sometimes I just asked people for a ride. I was tired. Sometimes they asked if I would like a ride. The important thing is this is your pilgrimage. Go as you wish, go as far as you wish, but go. You can go for a day, a weekend, or a week. You don't have to do what I did. There's temple etiquette. When you first arrive at the main gate, you'll stand to the left of the gate. You place your hands, your palms together, and then you shift your fingers so they're side by side and not directly on top of each other. And you bow once. The main gate has alcoves on the right side. There's statuary in each of the alcoves. These statuaries ward off evil. Next, you go to the wash basin. You want to purify both your mouth and your hands. This was my favorite part, the bell tower. You ring it to announce your arrival. It's considered bad luck to ring it when you leave. Listen. When you were there, you could actually feel it reverberating. It's housed in a big open air structure. Were you able to hear that little ding?
You're so gentle with that.
Yeah. When I did it, I put my whole weight behind it. I really wanted a big dong. Now you're ready for the main temple. It helps. The main deity is enshrined here. You're going to light a candle, light incense, ring a bell, place a name slip in a box, make an offering. If you are Buddhist, you're going to repeat the Heart Sutra. And my next slide will better describe this prayer. The Heart Sutra dates back to the 5th century before Buddhism came to Japan. A Chinese priest traveled to India. He received the prayer. It goes from China to India to Japan. It's non-denominational. It's pronounced in Sanskrit. I'm going to play a 30-second clip so you can get an idea of what this was like. Keep in mind that the Japanese would be doing it twice as fast. So this is what a main temple looked like. This would be, in this particular temple, this is where you lit your candle. And it's okay, you could light it and immediately the wind blew it out, the flame. That's all right. And then next you light your incense. And here you begin your prayer service. As I'm not Buddhist, I wanted to bring some spirituality to this pilgrimage. You always lit the incense in bundles of 3. So I thought of it in terms of past, present, and future. And then I think about a person who is big in my life. I think about a past experience with them, something that they were doing now, and how they would relate in my life in the future. Sometimes these people were already dead, but they're still living in my life. And sadly, some of these people I were thinking about, I knew would die while I was in Japan. This is the temple bell cord in the center. This bell is ever so much softer, not as thrilling. Next, you'd go to a smaller temple, and this would be for Kobo Daishi. Remember, he's unifying all the 88 temples. Now you're ready for the temple office. Here you're going to get documentation. Those of you who have done the Camino, you know you have a passport, and every night you have it stamped to prove that you've been on the way. Thank you. I never got tired of it. It's tranquil. And here's my book. And remember, it's Japanese, so it's going to open backward. So for every temple, I would get a stamp. And in my book, I would have an illustration of the actual temple. It's bound together with ribbon. Some Japanese who make this pilgrimage will choose to take the ribbon out, and when they're cremated, the pages will be set on top of their bodies and they will be cremated with this book. You could choose to have a scroll, and this scroll then becomes an heirloom that's passed from generation to generation. Now you're ready to leave the temple. You exit through the gate, you turn around, face the entrance, put your hands together and bow one more time. It's important to know about osetas. These are unexpected gifts given to a henro. By giving an oseta to a henro, people are really giving these items to kobayashi and not to you. You never refuse an oseta. It's inconsiderate of other person's beliefs. You always express thanks. In this situation, I wanted to take a picture of this vending machine. Finally, I got it all lined up, found just the machine I wanted to. I'm ready to click the picture, and here comes a truck parked right in front of it. Lady comes out, she deposits coins. You hear 2 cans thumping out. She crosses the street, she presents them to me. Which one do I want? I chose one, gave thanks. She got in a car, drove away. One gentleman gave me these osetas. You can see all these wonderful cloth bags. It's great that they were light. One of the few things that I took home with me. They were filled with all these candies, cookies. I polished those up within hours. In the top corner, you can see knitted sandals that someone gave me. I just tied those onto my backpack. Sometimes you got money. In this envelope, I got 1,000 yen, which is the equivalent of $10. I chose to buy a bracelet so I would always have a keepsake. I was having dinner one night and a couple asked to join me as they had finished their dinner. I was thrilled, but they kept apologizing. Your dinner's getting cold. We're so sorry. We're being inconsiderate. And I simply explained that what was memorable was meeting them and not the food. The next morning, they came down to the dining room with a watercolor that he had made for me that evening. It says, "Once in a lifetime chance." Knowing about osetas, I chose to bring some of my own. In the corner, you can see a roll of mint nickels. I took 2 rolls. On one side depicts Thomas Jefferson, the 3rd president. On the other side, Monticello. And in simplest words, I would say, 3rd president, Thomas Jefferson. Home, Monticello. I work there. They would give thanks, and as they were leaving, I could hear people say, she works at the White House. Henros have a proper attire. The mannequin on the right has all the bells and whistles. That's my friend Christina on the left. We had talked about this trip months before we left. She was definitely going to get the conical hat because she had done her research. Japan has poisonous snakes. They fall from the trees. She said they'd land on your hat, then slide off. Made good sense. But in reality, they aren't comfortable. She didn't get one. Another important feature is the vest. Another one would be the staff. Both Christina and I chose not to carry the wooden staff. We felt more comfortable with athletic walking poles. I wanted the stability. You buy these things at the temple shop by the first temple. You'll find them throughout the pilgrimage. This is a visa moment. But as you're looking at all these objects, remember, whatever you buy, you're going to carry. These are not walking poles. These represent kobodaishi. The staff guides the Hinro on their journey. The script says, two walk as one. When you arrive at an accommodation, the first thing a host does is take your walking staff and they wash the tip and set it in a special place. And then they greet you. My friend Anna had to get her staff ready to go home. You don't leave them, you don't abandon them. This is Gobo Daishi. So she hand-stitched a burlap bag for the flight to Copenhagen. Part of the procedure are name slips. On the back of the name slip, you write your date and your name. To bring some spirituality to this 88 Buddhist temples pilgrimage, I made an intention. The intention could be I was going to email somebody at home, or perhaps I would make sure that I offered to let somebody go in front of me in a line. The colors denoted how many trips you've done. If you had a brocade name strip, you had done the pilgrimage over 100 times. I met this fellow. Can you imagine? He's done it 100 times. There are 3 pilgrim oaths. I don't want you to think you've got to stand up and say the oath. I just want you to be aware of it to better understand this pilgrimage. I believe that Kobo Daishi will save all living beings. He will always be with me. I would hear Hinros walk, and they're talking to their walking stick. Oh, Kobo Daishi, I'm tired. Please help me. Kobo Daishi, I don't know which way to go. Which way do I go? So they're constantly having this dialogue with Kobo Daishi. I will not complain when things do not go well. I will consider such experiences to be part of the pilgrimage. Folks, that's me. I've got 5 layers on. It's a bit nippy. I'm walking through a tunnel, half-mile long. Somebody had given me an osetta of a face mask. That's pre-COVID. I didn't know what to do with it, but I discovered in the tunnel, there's so many fumes that certainly helped. I will believe all can be saved in the present world. I will ask to be able to achieve enlightenment. And finally, there are precepts. These are general rules to regulate behavior or thought. Think about the civilization of mankind. There are always certain beliefs that all society has. I'm going to flick through these and think about them. We've now laid foundation so you have a better perspective for 88 Buddhist temples. The next topic is going to be planning. Things to consider before you leave home. For me, it's always money. Airline ticket. Can't tell you how much it cost. That was moot. I used frequent flyer miles. But I will say I flew an hour and a half from Charlottesville to Charlotte, North Carolina. And then a 4-hour flight on to Los Angeles. 12 and a half hours later, I arrived in Osaka, Japan. A bus met me right at the bus terminal. It took me on a 2-hour ride to Tokushima, which was one of the largest cities in Shikoku. The cost of the pilgrimage. The guidebook suggests $4,000 if you're walking it. I thought I actually spent $5,000. When I travel, I often make a cheat sheet. Here you see a column for yen and a column for dollars. Sometimes your mind goes blank when you're in a store, and it just is nice to have the answers written down. Everybody needs money. You get money the same way in Japan as you do in the States from an ATM machine. The location of ATM machines were superimposed on maps in your guidebook. They would be at post office, 7-Elevens, Family Mart, which was another convenience store. As you approach the ATM machine, it's all in Japanese, but as soon as you insert your credit card, a screen will let you have an option for English. Keep in mind, small businesses don't take credit cards. You need to carry cash. Rule of half. When your wallet has about half the amount of money you think you need to carry, go to the next ATM machine. Physical training. It's going to reflect your travel intention and your level of fitness. For me, my regimen was to walk 3 days in a row. So I'd get up tired and have to walk on tired legs. I'd get up again and have to walk on tired legs. I'd do that for 6 weeks. I'd wear the shoes, the attire, carry the backpack. This allowed me to make adjustments before I left home. When to go? That's a no-brainer. Cherry blossom time. For the island of Shikoku, it's going to be mid-March to April, mid-April. I traveled 6 weeks from home back to home. Fall during fall foliage is also a nice time to do the pilgrimage. What to pack? I'm carrying 10.5 pounds. If you think you might need it, don't take it. You're only taking what you absolutely have to have. Basically, I had one outfit in which I would then stack and layer as it got cold. One pair of shoes, because when I got to my accommodation, they gave me shoes to wear. A traveler once told me, if what you're taking doesn't serve 3 purposes, it's not worthy of carrying. Everything fit in my lightweight backpack. You can see an O setup with the first arrow that somebody had given me. My guidebook tucked into the pocket. When I travel, I buy the nation's SIM card for data for internet. It's unusual in Japan. Based on what I know, the airport is the only place where you can buy a SIM card. Plan ahead. You can pick them at kiosks or in vending machines or make pre-arrangements through the internet and it's waiting for you. Now here's the caveat. You do not get a phone number. So there's no calling, no texting. But everybody's familiar with WhatsApp or Skype, so you can make voice calls, just in a different method. Accommodations were superimposed on your guidebook maps. They simply told you the type of accommodation, a contact name, and a number. Often, you really didn't have a choice because there was only one location where you needed it to be. In this situation, I arrived at a 7-Eleven. I held my guidebook up, pointed to the accommodation. It's listed in English and in Japanese, so the teller could read the Japanese name. And in this case, he just pointed me directly across the street. This was my accommodation. Now, one of my favorite type of accommodations were temples. Not all have accommodations. They may have private rooms with futon and a shared bath. For $60 to $80, you'd get 2 meals a day. There were religious ceremonies in the main hall. Other people could not attend it, only the people who are staying at the temple. One of my favorites were minshukus. Think of this as a bed and breakfast. They're family run. She's sharing her house. I was a little leery about staying in these places. I didn't want the family to be running in and out, having to chit chat with everybody. But they really want their privacy too. So there's a section for the family and a section for the guests. She was my host. Wish you could see her apron up close. It's starched with creases. She would see each hinro out the door and made sure they were walking in the right direction. She's vested. This is her business. You really got personal care in a Minshuku. The Ryokan was very much the same, except they're small Japanese businesses. Think of it as a small Japanese hotel. In the corner, you can see the futon. When you arrive to your room, they're folded and your comforter's on top. You'd find cookies or crackers, a thermos of tea, or a way of boiling water. Guest houses could be a private room, could be a dormitory with a futon. Now, my curiosity eventually got to me and I'd open the door. All the rooms had doors. Behind these are other futons. Sometimes you'd find 8 to a dozen stacked in these closets. So thinking like the Princess and the Pea, one night I took 4 out and I stacked them to see if the sleep was any difference. And I decided one futon was the most comfortable. I really liked it. It was my choice. Of course, you can stay at a hotel. These are self-contained rooms with private baths. You could get a Western style bed. Some of them had onsens. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Meals aren't included. A bit more expensive, about $80 a night. When you arrive at accommodation, the first thing, the host will take your walking stick and clean it. Then you take your shoes off. They give you house slippers. There's a second set of house slippers that you use in the bathroom. People at these accommodations spoke a bit of English. Follow their lead. Don't start asking questions. You don't want to fire off questions. Eventually, they'll tell you what time breakfast, dinner, and your bath time is. They'll tell you about laundry. They expect you to have laundry. Either bring it to them, they wash it, they dry it, they bring it back to you, or they show you where the washing machine is. They'll make future reservations for you. They'll tell you when payment is due. It's usually due in the morning. One morning, I'm walking down the street and I hear the sound behind me. A man on a bike's just shouting out, and I stop and I realize it's my host. I left without paying. I felt horrible. He realized it was an honest mistake. I was just more mindful before I left the accommodations each day. Now note how everybody's wearing the same outfit. This is one reason why your backpack's so light. You only need your daytime travel clothes. When you arrive at your accommodation, regardless of what kind of accommodation, they had a yukata. This was a simple kimono. It's clean, it's starched. Men and women wear the exact same thing. And you can see this gentleman has an outer wrapper. So if you're cold, there's another layer that you can read. So you're incredibly comfortable. You've had your hot bath up to your chin. You're dressed comfortably. And if you care to go down the street to the 7-Eleven, to a shop, you wear these outside in the public. They're considered acceptable. We talked a bit about onsens. These are the hot baths that Japan is so famous for. So here's the lowdown. Sexes are separate. You wash before you get into an onsen. Naked. Modesty is appreciated. No photography. Yes, I took photography, only after I was sure the onsen was empty. Here you can see where there's an area for bathing. Another reason why your pack's light. You never took shampoo or conditioner. It was always provided for you. Here's your hot onsen. It was lovely often to see women my age with their parents who needed assistance, and you'd see them clothing or perhaps rubbing lotion on their hands and then helping them into the onsen. And then be young children, 5 or 6 years old, who would be enjoying this time too. Now, most of them had an access to the outside where there would be a hot tub in a private area. So you move from outside to inside. Folks, is there any better way to end a long day's walk? There were low stools so you could sit on. Bathroom talk. You got to do it. Electric G-Whiz toilets. Folks, this is at a 7-Eleven. All the bathrooms were clean. They always had toilet paper. You'll see a panel here, and here it's enlarged. You have a shower, a bidet. There's noise in case you want background privacy. I was blown away. Food, always rice, always tea, always miso soup with a meal. You'd have fresh fish in different forms, sushi, sashimi, tempura, fruit. Green salad was only served at breakfasts. One thing that I really admired about the Japanese is when a meal was presented to them, they quietly gave a quiet moment. Very private, very unassuming. They're giving thanks for the beauty of the food. Now here's a Netflix recommendation for you. Midnight Diner. You can Google Midnight Diner. The guests walk into the small diner, they sit down at the counter, they're presented their food, and each take a moment. Not much longer than that for the beauty of the food. And then you'd see them grab their package of chopsticks and they'd split them apart. You'd hear this crack of the wood. Each time I hear it, I can remember cracking those chopsticks in Japan. Fond memories. Sometimes you were brought a cooking element. Here I cooked my own meat and vegetables. Sometimes they brought another kind of element and I would make my own tempura. This is a breakfast. If you were standing in the family-run accommodations, often they brought your dinner to your room. Think of it as room service. I spoke a bit about vending machines. They're ubiquitous. They're all over Japan. Anybody's gone to Japan, they're going to mention these vending machines. They've got an edge on America. We haven't gotten there yet. They have hot vending machines. You can get a cafe latte, a cappuccino, espresso. Talk about a real pick-me-up midday walk. They're so prevalent, you can almost make the whole pilgrimage by relying on this machine to get your water. So let's talk a bit about navigating, how to get from here to there. First night I'd made reservations. I chose Hotel Sun Route because it had an onsen. This one was a natural one. Japan has many volcanic warm springs underground that they pump up. It's on the 11th floor of this building. Then you would go outside and sit in a hot tub, and with the wicker fencing, I could see out over the city, but they couldn't see me. The next morning, I took a half-hour train ride from Tokushima to Bando. You don't follow the yellow brick road. You follow the green line to the first temple. Do you remember the mannequin with all of her temple accessories? There she is. Now you have one-day planning. You're going to consider the distance. For me, 15 miles is comfortable when you're doing it day after day. It varies based on altitude. If it's flat, I'm going to walk more. If it's going up and down hills, I'll do shorter. The terrain, weather. If you're going through a city or if you're in the wilderness, folks, for me, it was easier walking through the wilderness because there was one path. Just stay on the path. If you're through cities, there's so many turns that you might make or that you might miss. Perhaps you needed to stop at a 7-Eleven to pick up your sandwich for the day. If you're planning in advance, you might go, no 7-Eleven the next day. I need to get 2 sandwiches that day. Maybe you want to incorporate a bus or a train ride during one of your legs. Map also showed you where rest huts were, and this is a Pilgrim Rest Hut. A bench, you can lie down, you can sit. Often there would be food for you. And then there was the 3-day plan. So bottom line, you had to have manageable distance. I couldn't walk 15 miles, and then suddenly have a choice between 5 miles or 35 miles. So you're going to balance it out. I never thought I would walk all 88 Buddhist temples. In reality, I got close. Christina, my friend, and I'll talk more about her later, said, "You've got 20 days left. You've got to finish it. You're ever so close." I was willing to buy into this, but I didn't know how to make it. Whenever I looked at the guidebook, I couldn't do the distance and find an accommodation. They just weren't there. So one evening I had a reservation, chose this place because it was a hostel for bikers. What a neat bunch of people to hang out with. This is the guy who ran the hostel, and I simply asked, "Would you help me make reservations?" Folks, here's the caveat. He spoke impeccable English. He understood the range of 3 accommodations. So he would call, perhaps we'd get to the 3rd reservation. It's the only one for 20 kilometers. And the host would say, as you would expect, "Sold out, can't help." Then he pushed the envelope. How about somebody else in the village? If there was no response, he pushed the envelope one more time. So who can pick her up and take her to their place? Well, I'm not the only person that has this problem. She used to this problem. So she said, "Okay, tell her to come to my house. I will call. Somebody will come and pick her up." That's a little dubious, but I'm believing these things just happen. So I went and I arrived, and as I sat there, a dozen other pilgrims came. They're doing the same thing as me. And eventually 2 vans came, they picked us up, they drove us a half hour away. We had a lovely evening. The next morning we left. The van stops at a convenience store, waits for it to open up so we could all buy lunch, because he knew we would not find any stores on our next day walk. Things just happen. So this is what the guidebook actually looks like. The red dots are the routes. Here you got a variant. You can go this way or this or that way. 65th, that's the 65th temples, and it'll give you the down and dirty, all that you would like to know about the temple. This is a plethora of information. And what's so neat is often things are written both in English and in Japanese. So if you need help, someone will help you. So now you're walking and you need wayfinders. This one simply says, go this way or go that way. You don't know where you're going. This one's a little bit more English friendly. You've got the iconic red pilgrim with the conical hat, the walking staff, and the vest. Go straight away to Temple 28. It's 16.7 kilometers away. During the route, you'd find signs like this on a telephone pole. Now, this is what happened as the days went by. I learned that these symbols meant the Henron, and I could recognize the Japanese symbols, and I knew this was the arrow that I needed to follow. It wasn't an arrow that took you to a grocery store. And I understood that this yellow arrow was also a sign. Now, this one I was more assured of, recognized the pilgrim. But here's the important part. You don't want to be lulled by the walk. Just absolutely stunning scenery. But you're constantly roaming your eyes. You're looking for these signs. There could be a change in direction. Some of these signs were aged and faded. This is a twist on the Camino's yellow arrow. Okay, folks, have you found the waymarker sign here? There it is on the pole. Next, we're going to talk about Henrode's hearts. It's the people that's so very special about this pilgrimage. Anna was from Copenhagen. She taught me to take advantage of the moment, to make the moment into a memory. So one day we're walking and we pass a bean cake shop. Doesn't that look cool? It's amazing. So we decided to forego the walk and eat bean cakes in the park. Folks, regardless of what you're doing, life always presents opportunities. Do you choose to take them? Do you choose to ignore them? I had to be willing to let go of walking this leg. Folks, I have walked every step carrying my backpack on every pilgrimage. I was battling, but in the back of my mind, I'm reasoning. This is Tokushima. When I finish, I come here, I can then quickly jump on and do this 2-hour walk. I can make it up later. But at that moment, I knew I would never remember what I would see on that 2-hour leg. But I'd always remember this moment. Arnold from Ottawa, he was my guru. This was his 4th Shikoku pilgrimage. Folks, he knew what he was doing. I did not know what I was doing. I knew I didn't know, and it caused great angst. I was incredibly uncomfortable. You've heard the expression, don't give me fish, but teach me how to fish. Arnold let me shadow his plan for days. He explained the rationale in making these decisions. I'm gaining in confidence and skills. He's a Buddhist, so when we went to the temples, I could listen to him recite the Heart Sutra. So now I'm going to get over walking, not walking, and riding public transportation. He did it. He simply opened up the guidebook, showed me the map, and said, to get from this temple to that temple is a 3-day walk beside a highway, very busy highway, very narrow shoulder. And I'm thinking, how do I make the most of this experience in Japan? Take a train, take a bus. So that means he had to teach me. Oh, by the way, note, he's in a vest and I'm not. I wore that vest for all of 4 hours my first day. It constantly got in the way. The sleeves were too blousy. The wind was blowing. It was just all over the place. It went in my backpack. That's where it stayed. So he had to teach me how to read a train and a bus schedule. The nice thing is they're intuitive. The nice things are trains and buses usually come within an hour range of time. Once you read the schedule, you know what time it'll be. They're on time. The stations are marked on your map. Arnold let me share his company until I was able to be on my own. Folks, I could not be doing Arnold's pilgrimage of 88 Buddhist temples. I had to be doing my own. Look at this dining room. They're all individuals. They're not sets of people. What I found so endearing about Arnold is that he carried hundreds and hundreds of teeny tiny Canadian flag pins that you could put in the lapel of your jacket. Here he's giving one to each child on a field trip. Not the first child stuck out his hand, me first, rushed. They just sat very patiently and all expressed thanks. What a great way to represent your country. Naomi from Japan. She taught me tranquility. So by now you've gathered early part of this pilgrimage. I've got a lead weight. Here we go. Right here on my chest. It's there. I knew I didn't know what I was doing, but day by day I was getting by. I met Naomi and she offered to let me travel with her, share accommodations for 3 days. As soon as I met her, I felt that lead weight coming off my chest. The first morning, we're sitting at tea, and I told her I had felt angst. I felt really horrible, but meeting her, it was all gone. So she replied, we must have been family in another life. She treated me like her daughter. She taught me more subtleties of temple services. The correct way to hold your hand for prayer. When you take your sandals off at an accommodation, you back the heels against the wall. She was always getting after me for leaving them strewn in the hall. By the way, the Japanese back into parking spots. She chastised me when I took a picture during a temple ceremony. She dressed me. She showed me the proper way to tie the bow so it would stay tied. There's a bow on the outside and another on the inside. She taught me that the left side goes over the right side. She gave me pride in this vest. I always wore it thereafter. Christina from Paris. We've talked about her already. Folks, I met her the first day on my first pilgrimage in 2014. We shared a compulsion. We both wanted to do the 88 Buddhist temples. So imagine Christina flying east from France 2 weeks before I left. I left flying west from the USA. We're doing an out and back in which you have to go out to a temple and then you have to come back to the route. And I'm walking and I look up and there's Christina. Was it fate that caused that collision? I don't know. I never expected it to happen, but here we are. So we agreed to meet later in the week and take a day off, be on holiday. We were making deposits in our friendship memory bank. Folks, ice cream cones always taste better with a friend. We've known each other for so long, it was great to have a heart-to-heart conversation. Did this experience meet your expectations? Christina said no. The Japanese people were far kinder than she ever could imagine. Did she have any disappointments? Yes. Too much rice. She wanted a French baguette. Regrets? Yes. She should have taken more rides when offered. Folks, she's done as many pilgrimages I have. She's walked every single step carrying her bag. She's walked through hideous blisters. But this is different. You experience the people just as well when you're on a bus or a train or sitting at a station. Here you see her vest, and these are the writing on the back of the vest. It was like carrying a signboard that said, I'm a Hinron, take care of me. I'd walk up to people and sometimes I'd see them going like this, no, and they point to this direction. So I knew I was going the wrong way. Everybody's watching out for you. By the way, if I were to answer these same questions, I'd say the same thing. Great minds think alike. So the next day we decided to take one journey together. We're walking through the countryside and out of nowhere we hear a voice. Wrong way. Well, the gentleman proceeded to say that we were on the long variant. There's a shorter way. But he offered to give us a ride in his truck. You've never seen two people get in a truck any quicker than the two of us. It was a better way. He was offering an oseta, a gift to Kobodaishi, the ride, the fruit. We were graciously accepting. This gentleman spoke impeccable English. Before we separated, oh, by the way, that's us. Look at our feet. We're having a grand time riding in this pickup. Before we separated, he made sure that we had his contact information. If anything happened, he could be our translator. We kept in contact. He later did the Camino in Spain and wrote of that experience. Akita from Japan. This was his third pilgrimage. He taught me the power of sharing and caring, that actions transcend words. I speak maybe a dozen Japanese words badly. He spoke a wee bit of English. So we basically walked in silence. I'm getting ready to do Temple 60 the next day, and I knew it was the third highest hill, very rigorous in the wilderness. I didn't want to do it by myself. So at dinner, I just threw out an open invitation. Would someone walk with me? And Akia said yes. We simply bonded on that silent day of walking. And during the next 10 days, our paths crossed many times. We'd walk together for a while, then separate, then come together each time. Our friendship was layering. Finally, Temple 88. I was warned, take the road. But Temple 88 was the highest mountain. I hadn't come this far without going over the mountain. I knew I physically could do it. But the problem was I got lost. This caused the greatest dilemma, the greatest angst. Suffice to say, I got things sorted out and I arrived at a temple. I looked up and I saw Akita. This is what he saw. Someone covered head to toe with dust and grime. Without saying, he understood. I had a rough day. He offered sympathy. He offered me a cup of hot tea. He offered company. It sure meant a lot at this moment. We have since become pen pals. I don't know who does it, but he's got this superior translator. I'll send something in English and it'll come back, a wonderful letter. Here he's responding to my talking about the US presidential election, and then he connects it to Japanese government. And then he always asks about my cute cats, and he's anxious to hear from me. He was invited to this Zoom, but he said, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't think I can make it. Perhaps he'll be able to see it when the center archives. Saburo and Namio from Japan. I met them during 2018 Camino Norte. As soon as I found out they were Japanese, I'm not shy. I asked, have you done the 88 Buddhist temples? Well, Sapporo hangs his head down low, covers his mouth, and he's shaking as though in shame, and then starts laughing and says, yes, but we drove it. He said, when you come to Japan, you must stay with us. So I finished the pilgrimage. I returned to Temple 1. I then took a bus back to Osaka, and then they met me and drove me to Koasan. Koasan is the suggested beginning or ending of the pilgrimage. This is where Kobo Daishi is in internal meditation. In other words, this is where his mausoleum is. It is the largest cemetery in Japan. There are 117 temples. They're standing in front of one temple. This is powerful. When we finished visiting Koasan, they took me to their house, which is located where the cursor arrow is. They shared their home, their garden. They took me up into the mountains where one of their family members generations ago donated this temple. They showed me their family relics, samurai swords, hangings. I had tea ceremony with them. They shared their home. They shared their hearts. In closing, I have books. Carolyn has a copy of the books list. You can see her for it. Here you see somebody else's pilgrim book. I stayed at one accommodation. The host was probably my age, if not a little bit older. And he spoke. As a young boy, he was very, very sick. And at about age 5, his mother took him on this pilgrimage. I could not believe a 5-year-old walking this distance. This was his original pilgrim book. So here's one of the books I recommended. Shikoku Guide 88. This is the guidebook that I use. This is your Bible, only thing you need. If you happen to buy one, don't be surprised. They make a new edition each year, so the cover's going to change. A nice narrative. This is one gentleman's description of a walk. At times I'm crying, at other times I'm going, I can't believe I'm doing this. Some of his experiences were horrifying. This is a book I love to give as a gift. A history of the world in 500 walks. The Appalachian Trail is in it. The Camino is in it. 88 Buddhist temples are in it. Great book. This is one that I found when I got home. It's my inspiration. During the Camino, I learned to set an intent at each temple. The intent was something, maybe saying a kind word, maybe buying a bag of candy and giving it out as osetas during the day. Maybe it's emailing somebody at home. Well, this has one-liners in it. When I wake up in the morning, I read these one-liners, and for a minute, I think about how I can improve my life. This helps me. I've referenced materials on the web as well as my own blog and Arnold's blog. My blog looks like this, scandor.com. You'll go on the homepage, pull down the menu for 88 Buddhist temples. I describe how far I walked, the weather of the day, perhaps the elevation, if I took a train or walked the whole thing. And then there may be 2 or 3 sentences, short and sweet. I get one nugget, and I talk about that one nugget a day. And then I have 3 great pictures to go with it. Arnold's blog is different. His is narrative. So he goes into a deeper description. Although we weren't walking together, each night we would read each other's blog and then respond. It was a cool way to share the experience. Takeaway. These are some of my takeaways. They may not be yours. I hope with the introduction, pardon me for reading so much, you've got a sense of the kindness and the civility of the Japanese. Perhaps this has inspired you to take a walk. I'm not talking about going out for 517 miles. Walk down the block. Walk in the Rivanna City Park if you're in Charlottesville, or up on the Appalachian Trail. Whatever's comfortable for you. Set an intent. I'm not talking about, today I've got to go to the grocery store, I'm going to vacuum, I'm going to help my children with their academics. It's something that helps someone else. Perhaps when you go to the grocery store, you'll pick up groceries for somebody else. During the pandemic, maybe you'll call an older person who can't get out and just chat with them. Perhaps you know of a young family. They're working at home, their kids are at home. You can drop off a dinner for them. Show civility. Time alone. I know you're sitting there shaking your head. You have had profound pandemic isolation. Isolation and time alone is not the same thing. For me, it's sitting outside with nothing. I listen to the birds. I watch the leaves, the clouds move. I watch my feeble flowers. I just sit very peacefully. In the winter, I build a fire and I just watch it. Perhaps some of you will be going to Japan and you'll be willing to try traditional accommodation. When you go to a temple, you'll be more mindful of the proper etiquette. Perhaps you might try to do a pilgrimage for one day, a weekend, or a week. But I'd love to hear what your takeaway from this may be. I want to give thanks, first of all, to my coach, Mark Lorenzoni. He did an inspirational coast-to-coast walk, which you can now see through the center. It just so happened that Tom Cross saw it and he immediately emails me, says you've got to do one on 88 Buddhist temples. He motivated me. He also provided endless technical support for doing this. And thanks to Cara Lynn Merrick. She's a champion of the center. She handled all the details. And finally, your questions. Folks, what would you like to know?
From Jan, thank you so much for sharing your journey. On slide 35, you mentioned the number of your journey certificate. What was the number of travelers since January?
True. I can't answer that question because I don't know. They keep different counts. On that particular tally sheet, these are only international people. They also keep a tally for the Japanese. Keep in mind that you could do the pilgrimage in a car or in a bus, and you wouldn't be counted in this particular count. All I can do is tell you hundreds of thousands of people do it in a year. I don't have the specifics. Great question.
I was just wondering if that number started in January. Was it January to March that you were
That number,
1,400?
yes,
Okay.
thank you. That number started with January, whereas the sheet that had the international count at maybe 416, that ran from June to July of the following year.
Okay, got it.
Mhm.
I would like the reference material. Why not sending it to everybody anyway? Well, if you email me, it's easier because there are about 70 people who are on the call. So I put my email in the chat, but I'll tell it to you now, Carolyn at thecenterseville.org. Be happy to email that to you. Yeah. And if I can, I'll email to everyone. I'll see if I can do that. Let's see. Dear Linda, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. It was a beautiful talk. I'd love to see you again. Love, Anna from Denmark.
I love it. You
Your
all know Anna now.
Your photographs are fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing and enjoying your journey. And I'd like to echo that. I felt like I was walking it with you. All the the little anecdotal information you gave was just so lovely, so lovely. Excellent presentation, Linda Arnold from Ottawa.
There's Arnold. He called me this afternoon to make sure I was ready. He is my guru. He's great.
That's great. That's awesome.
Oh.
And I can unspotlight you and you can see more people. How about that?
Okay.
All right. And if you hit gallery view, there we go.
I'll do that. Wow. New friends and old friends. Family.
Here's a question from Virginia Porter. Linda, thank you so much. The presentation, oh, I'm sorry, a comment. The presentation was wonderful. Patricia Lansky, sorry. You mentioned the air quality in the tunnels. Was it clear air otherwise?
It was clear air otherwise, although you can imagine the exhaust from a truck. It sort of lingers in the air. It's unpleasant. And I had no idea that there were so many tunnels. But if you think about Japan, I assume that volcanoes formed the island, so you have very sharp peaks. The mountains, it was not unusual to find a mountain with an angle like this to go down. So it was just, you can go over, you can go around, or you can go through. And the Japanese often just chose to go through mountains.
Interesting. Thanks, Linda. No surprise. It was very informative. Great photos. You're my hero. Phyllis from Annapolis.
Thank you, Phyllis. I see you there. She's followed me on my blog on every trip. She's known me since days out of college.
That's so great.
Oh, Janice.
And she said, Phyllis says, and I don't hike. So. You've inspired me to walk around the block and think about things rather than just what I have to do next. So thank you. What's your next trip? Oh, great question.
I had two that fizzled during the pandemic. The first was a walk with Arnold. They've started a Camino in Spain. In Canada. You'll find another one in Japan. The idea has spread. We would have walked from Ottawa to Montreal. 12-day walk, have no idea how far it is. For me, it's just a 12-day walk. I was looking forward to it. And then I was going to do the Portuguese Camino from Lisbeth to Santiago in the fall. So all of these will just happen at a later date.
They sound wonderful. If you had to distill it down to like what drives you, or what is your impetus for doing these trips, what would you say it is?
I love new places. I love meeting people. I love being outside. Most traditional trips abroad, you're separated from the people. You really don't meet the people. But to do something like this, you're meeting people for which there'll be a range. You might not see them every day, but you'll see them a couple days later, and it's like your long lost friend. You really develop long lasting friendships. I'm active, that satisfies that needs. And there's just something that reaches in and hooks you. I was walking the Camino in France. It was the last day. I'd finished 500 miles. I walked into the Jeep, which is a hostel that I stayed at, and somebody just showed me a card. And on this card, it said 88 Buddhist temples. That's all it took. I knew I was going to do it. Some things are black and white for me. I just know. You take me in a store and ask me to buy a pair of shoes. I'm going to be trying on every shoe. I can't make a decision. But sometimes with these big pictures, I just know in my heart of hearts, this is what I want to do.
That's really lovely.
Tom, you had a bunch of questions that I wrote down and then I left them at home. Do you happen to remember any of them?
How important is your conditioning to do a hike like this?
How
Someone that, can easily walk, 4 or 5 miles, can they do something like that? Because you talked about hiking 15 miles a day.
Okay. So the question is, how important is your conditioning to do something like I do? A lot of this simply depends upon how much you want to do. You don't have to do 15 miles a day. I see Joanna, who's in England. She's a little bit older than me, but she walks faster than me, and we can certainly, there you go, certainly walk the same distance. Tom, you and I have hiked many a times. You are an incredibly fit walker. It just depends upon your level of fitness. Choose what you're comfortable with, but don't set out and say, I've got to do it. The biggest mistake I find that people do when they're walking long distance walks is they don't allow enough time. So suddenly they go, oh, I've got 40 days. I need to do this whole thing in 40 days. I've got to do this distance. They're not listening to their body. Some days you just take a day off. Some days you go short distances. But by listening to your body, you can keep going. The trick is never to push yourself to an edge. I stay in condition. I consider myself an athlete. I'm active, but I'm the exception.
My name is Guy Larry Brown, and I served in Japan for 15 months unaccompanied back in 1958 and 59. And my wife and I subsequently have traveled to over 87 different countries. I also served while I was on active duty for 22 years in Vietnam a couple of times, Cuba, Dominican Republic, and so forth. But of all of the places in the world that we have visited, I have come away with no more respect for any nationality than I have my Japanese friends with whom we are still in contact over all of these years. No nationality that we have ever encountered of the many exhibits that level that they do, and we just love them. And to you, domo arigato gozaimashita.
Thank you so much. I'd like to build on what you said. There, 1955, I met people from Hiroshima. And my first thought was, how do they see me? Do they see me as an American that dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima? That wasn't the case. No one batted an eye. Oh, it's so pleasant to meet you. You must come. You must visit us. I'm pretty safe in what I do, but imagine what it takes for me to feel comfortable in situations. I had 5 minutes before a temple would close. I had my Google Maps. I could see it, the temple, on my Google Maps on my device, but I couldn't get there. The roads were just all circled. I'm stopping cars, and other cars are stopping other cars. And finally somebody says, I'm a taxi driver. I'll take you there. And I jump in. What does it take for you to feel that comfortable to ride with a stranger? I certainly wouldn't do that at home. So They are exceptional people. If you have the opportunity to go to Japan, you'll get a lot out of it. Another question, please.
And I'd just like to say thank you so much, Mr. Brown, and thanks for figuring out the sound on that. It was a lovely tribute to the Japanese culture. Thank you. Anyone else? We have a couple of minutes if you're interested, and we understand if you need to go as well.
Then if I could describe one more situation. I
Sure.
knew I was supposed to arrive at your accommodation between 3 and 5. I had a reservation. I arrived at 3:15. I couldn't find the door. I stopped the postman. He walks me around to the side. He shows me the door. It's locked. So then he walks me upstairs, and there are 4 rooms. He says, you know, this is where you stay. And I knock on doors. They're all full. The bottom line is that my reservation for some reason wasn't acknowledged. It was getting dark. I had no place to stay, but I knew you just stand there and you express, I need help. So a lady came out. I'm opening up my book and she's seeing what's in the area, and she's calling and calling. And finally she gets someone who responds. I can come and pick her up, but I'm not planned. I don't have dinner for her. And I said, that's fine. So she travels, she picks me up. On the way to her house, she stops at an octopus fast food store. Octopus is delicious. We get to her place. She sits me down. She puts the octopus in front of me. 10 minutes later, she comes in and she says, your bath is ready. So of course I get, oh, I'll take my bath. She says, oh, no. Your bath will wait. Eat your octopus. So I ate my octopus. I give her my clothes. Oh, by the way, I'm eating at one of these low tables where you're sitting on the floor and it's got a blanket, a tablecloth that goes to the ground. There's a heater underneath it, like an electric blanket. Oh my gosh, my cats would die for this. It was so exquisite to have this warm heat. Then when I finished my stack, I took my bath. I came back and she's checking with reservation. She goes, oh, no. Too short. You'll get there before 3. No. Finally, she says, it's not a clean place. The only place that was described as not clean. You have to go to this hotel. So we changed my reservations. We canceled and make new ones. The next morning I oh, by the way, I had a huge dinner that she just managed to whip up. The next morning after breakfast, she comes in on a coat hanger is my vest, washed, ironed, and starched. And then she has a bag of rice balls. So I have lunch. She takes me in her car to where I dropped off on the walk. You know, this is what it's like. So that's a good thought to leave with all of you. Carolyn, is there anything else you'd like to say? I'd like to thank you again and all of you for sharing this with me.
What was your favorite food?
My favorite food, really like octopus and tempura, shrimp, fish. Keep in mind, I'm eating with chopsticks. That's okay. But I see that I have a little bit of fish. Sometimes it has a head on it. And I go, well, do you eat the head or do you not eat the head? Bone the fish or do you eat the bones? So you just watch. And they would somehow break the fish, rip it apart with their chopsticks. I look like a 4-year-old with sticks attacking my meals. I would just throw it in my mouth. I'd look at it and I go, you know, this looks like fish and looks like eyeballs. I don't care. It's got to be good for you. And I just ate it. I have no idea what I ate, but I figured it's good for you. So, and they always balanced. You get a little of everything. Not only did it visually look good, but the palate, sweet, sour, savory, salty.
Were any of the temples crowded? Did you have a wait to go through any of them?
Oh, this is a great story. Were any of the temples crowded? Did I have a wait? Well, we talked about bus groups going up. I'm at a temple. I'm in line to have my book stamped. And here's this gentleman behind me, and he's having a conversation with a temple person over my head. And I thought, well, you know, just be polite. Let him go ahead of you. He thanks me, and I look at the 2 people behind me, and they motion, that's fine. The next thing I know, he gets this big sack, 2 of them, 20 some odd pilgrim books. So the guide has to do each one individually, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the people behind me like, oh my gosh. And that, they aren't batting an eye. But being American, I'm thinking, you've taken advantage of me. Couple weeks down the way. So then I adapted. When I would go to a temple, the first thing I would do is go to the office and get it stamped when there wasn't a line. Smart. But then you could see this metamorphosis. I'd go to a temple, last place I'd go to the temple office. If there was a line, I'd just say, obviously, it's not time for me to stop. There's something more I need to see. And I'd circle back and see more. So there was a gradual change in everything.
That's really fascinating.
Thank you.
Well, and to put in a little plug, Linda has said that she would do another talk for us, this time the Camino Santiago, one of their legs of that journey. And that's going to be on Tuesday, February 2nd, same time, 3 to 4:30. So please come, enjoy, invite your friends. We'd love to have you. Linda, thank you so much for all your preparation. This was a true gift to us. It was really, your care came forward so clearly. How much this meant to you, I really got it. Thank you so much.
Well, I thank you, and I thank all the people who supported me before I left, while I was away, and who are willing to let me talk about it. And again, Carolyn and Tom, I couldn't have done this without either of you. And it couldn't happen without an audience. And I so appreciate all the familiar faces. I'm just going through right now, looking again. I'm overwhelmed. So enjoy and travel. Be with the people.